Hello and welcome to Coffee Pot Conversations, hosted by An Englishman in Paris. Today's episode 1.8 Avec Claudine is special, not least of all because in a few days it's someone's special birthday. Not particularly special, but it's a birthday and all birthdays are special. The reason this one's special is because I had a guest interviewer with me. So it was myself and the guest of the show, plus Nev, who is sat beside me now.
Hi.
So there we go. This is Nev's first attempt at co-hosting a podcast. So
Yes.
it's quite exciting.
And quite scary.
And quite scary because she's looking at the back of my head and she doesn't know when to talk.
No idea.
When we spoke to Claudine, I'm just going to turn around to face Nev. When we spoke to it's Claudine Hemingway, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. There's a bit of a spoiler alert. Whoop, whoop. So when I spoke to, when we were talking to Claudine, I had Nev beside me at the same time, which you'll hear during the interview. Her volume's a little bit low during the interview because I was still getting used to all the mics and things. And so it's the first time I had a co-host with me or a co-interviewer.
Yeah.
And now it's the first time I've got a co-host, which is quite exciting.
Am I hosting?
Not really. You're just sitting there.
I don't think you can refer to me as co-host.
Well,
Really?
you never know. What's a co-host? Define co-hostage.
No idea. I think I'd like to refer to you as, myself as your partner in crime, I guess. But then that would denote that we do a lot of crime, so that's probably not the best thing. So your better half, but then that would mean that you're not the good half, so that doesn't work either. So let's just go with co-host.
Yeah, thanks for ruining my podcast
Sorry.
so early in the season. That's lovely. So, as I say, it is episode 1.8. We're heading up to 1.10, which is the best bits. If you've got anything you want me to talk about, please do email in coffeepot@anenglishmaninparis.blog. That's a call to action. I'll be doing some more of those at the end. In the meantime, this part Nev doesn't particularly like because she feels that it's a part of a podcast that is a podcast by itself. But it's the week that's taken place around Paris. I've caught up a few different parts.
So, Paul, what's been in the news this week?
Don't know. Been busy quitting my job. What's been going on with you?
You know what? I haven't actually felt this week. Like, I can't believe it's Friday.
Can't believe it's not butter.
Because it is Friday, sorry. It is Friday, right?
Well, it's Friday in real land, but not in podcast release every second Tuesday and every fourth Tuesday of the month, running from January to May and then July
Right,
to
so that
November.
could explain why I'm absolutely confused with what day it is then.
Absolutely. Just to make things even worse, I recorded Jasper's episode 2 weeks ago.
But when's Jasper's episode being released?
3 weeks' time. But at the date of this, it will be 2 weeks' time.
Okay. Well, that could explain why I have no idea what day it is, or date for that matter.
Absolutely. 3 weeks from the day of this release, because this is one of those special months where we go the 30th and then the 7th and then the 14th, so it's released on the 14th of May.
Jasper's one?
Jasper's episode.
Okay, that'll be fun.
Absolutely, and that's that is a spoiler alert because I've been keeping that quiet for quite a while.
Yeah, but you might not even put this into the...
I think it's too late to write about that. So, for those of you listening for the first time round, we had a technical issue when it all went whoopsie woo woos. So we've just been recording for about half an hour, making sure it's not happening. The problem is we've not listened back to make sure it's not happening, and that's not really good. I'm just going to turn this volume down just a little bit, just in case.
May I make a comment?
You certainly may, young Nev.
I don't think people realise, actually, just how much work goes into just one episode of a podcast, I don't think.
Well, just if I may interject there, my last episode, which was released, episode 1.7, podcast productions, which I did with Rory, straight after doing his debut.
Yeah.
It was really easy. I had my phone, I had another phone, that was it. And then I used to cut it, not even cut it, I just used to put it straight into Anchor, which then turned into podcasters for Spotify, and that was it. And I used to do the intro, the conversation, the conclusion, the outro, bosh, job done. And it was so easy. They then adjusted it to use Riverside. All right, it's not great, but then volumes weren't always perfect to what I wanted, which is when Audacity came in. I then got my Zoom microphone for when I went to November.
Okay, that's already very complicated for me.
And then I'm having to get that, and then I'll need to get it in the correct file format to record it up or to implement it into Audacity. We're now using here goes another episode. I do apologise. Vocaster 2 interface. So the interface connects to the laptop, so we can talk and we can record straight through. It also works for live streaming, which I've started doing on Podbean. I said I wasn't going to mention that until later on, but we're attempting live podcasts through Podbean. Long story. But yeah, it's not straightforward, because if there's an issue, I know I was saying I don't cut and splice, but I do cut and splice using Audacity, which isn't so bad, but then you've got to get the volumes right, and that's the hardest part, because I've got my phone volume, I've got my headphone volume, I've got my Bluetooth volume, and I've got the other Bluetooth in the car volume. So that's 4 volumes that I need to try and adjust to make sure that it's working correctly. So in the car, I have it on a 3rd volume notch on a dial using the dodgy Bluetooth connection. When that works okay, I know I've nailed it, because then when I go onto the car, the Bluetooth, it's still sort of 3 nodules and it's not so bad. It's the same sort of level as Revolutions. I find the earful tower has to move up to 4.5, and that's all right, because if I'm in that boundary, it's good. But while we're talking, you can see these green bits on the Vocaster 2 bouncing up and down. If I just quickly flick onto Audacity where we are recording, you will see up here, I'm occasionally touching the green lines up here, but there's a huge grey area where the blue parts are. Now, I know it's not very exciting podcasting talk for people wanting to learn about Paris, but no, it's not a straightforward process anymore.
No, it really is not straightforward at all, I don't think. So for all the listeners out there, just to give you a heads up, this isn't an easy thing at all.
And also, just a quick note to Frankie that I work with. Like I always do, I make things look a lot easier than they are, and you are going to find that out, because I have unfortunately decided I'm going to leave my current occupation, employment, and start a new one on the 13th of May.
Yes.
The day before Jasper's episode comes out.
Yes.
Which is the 14th of May. 3 weeks from the date of this episode. And that's brought it straight back into the Paris podcasts.
Right.
That's good news.
We do apologise for all the digressions that we do, and we just sort of keep going. But
digressions. That's a good word.
Was it? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just remembered that I coughed earlier. I don't know whether I should be editing that out.
I think you should. I think there's a lot of this we should probably be editing, because people don't really want to listen to us going.
You'll be surprised what they don't want to listen to.
I'm not surprised what they don't want to listen to. To all the listeners out there, please let us know what you don't want to listen to.
And how can they get in touch with us? Call to actions. How can they get in touch with us?
Email you.
That's correct. Email at coffeepot@anenglishmaninparis.blog. I'm sure I've mentioned this. If I haven't, that's because I did earlier and we cut that part out, but I believe I did at the beginning. But also on Instagram, which is an Englishman in Paris blog. Also, Coffee Pot Conversations at hosted by An Englishman in Paris on all your regular podcast platforms. And I always find this part pointless, and I always do it because they're listening to the podcast, so they know how to find me. Yeah, I still do it.
They might find you, but they might not be able to. Well, I suppose they could if try and contact you.
Oh, they can contact me. All the contact details are everywhere. But to know where to listen to me on the podcast platforms, they know because they've heard the podcast.
Yeah.
Did I just nudge your microphone?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, that's going to be a douche in the background.
Apologies.
It's all going wrong. So I'm now going to continue.
I think it's me.
Okay, I'm now going to continue facing the screen, facing forwards.
So, Paul.
No.
That's a good question, actually. That's what I asked you earlier. We couldn't remember. So my question to Paul was, do I refer to you as an Englishman in Paris when I'm referring to you? Or do I refer to you as Paul, as that's your name? And that's what the question I was asking you. So when we were about to do the intro, I said to you, shall I say, thank you so much, Paul, for having me? Or should I say, thank you to Englishman in Paris for having me?
I don't think you mentioned Englishman in Paris before. I think you said, do I call you Paul or do I refer to you as Paul? Well, given that option, just Paul will suffice. It's all about the branding. Coffee Pot Conversations is the podcast side of things, and Englishman in Paris is like the major overall umbrellaing factor, but I'm still Paul.
Why'd you say it like that? Like, I'm just Paul.
I'm just Paul. I'm just a regular Paul man on the street.
There's nothing wrong with being a Paul.
Absolutely not. It's been part of my life for the last, good few years now. Ever since.
We're not going to say how old you are. Shh.
Oh, I don't mind telling people I'm 29. No, I am 48. I'm sure I've mentioned it somewhere briefly, probably in my writings, on an Englishman in Paris.blog. So check out my blog, which a lot of people don't know about because I don't really advertise it that much because it's just words on a screen. So, talking of words on a screen, shall we find out what's been happening in the news this week?
Yes, I think we should.
Again, Nev doesn't like this part.
Yeah.
Especially now that we're going to have to go over it twice, and we're going to try and make it look as natural as possible, like we don't know what's been happening. But that being said, I do know what happened earlier today. I was listening to LBC, London Broadcasting Corporation radio station. It's a phone-in, which I actually did phone in last week as well.
You did.
To talk about the use of mobile phones and children and things like that, which I actually covered briefly in another one. I think that's the one that you said you liked.
I did like that
You
one.
said
That
it
was
sounded
2
like an
episodes
actual
ago.
podcast.
Yeah.
2 episodes.
2 episodes ago. It was the Casablanca episodes.
Okay. 1.6, Casablanca.
There you go.
I really should have a list of these written up
Don't
somewhere.
say I don't listen. I do listen.
You certainly do. So I was listening to the radio today at work. Excuse me. Listening to the radio today at work, and they shut down the area around the Iranian consulate in Paris. Reason being, there was a chap, a 6-year-old man. He walked into the Iranian embassy carrying fake grenades and a makeshift explosive vest. It was a fake vest, which is good. Well, it was a real vest, but it was fake explosives. The police shut the area down, and they all pretty much stormed in, took the chap out today, which is Friday the 19th, despite the episode going out on a Tuesday. So when you are listening to this in 3-4 years' time, it took place on April the 19th, 2024. The chap was known to the police, but not known to intelligence agencies. He was convicted in 2023 for having set fire to tyres in front of the Iranian embassy's gate on September the 9th of the same year, an act which he claimed was in protest against the Iranian regime. And just to let you know, that he was banned from Paris's 16th arrondissement for 2 years, as well as from carrying a weapon. So it's a little bit disturbing that he's just been banned from the 16th. I don't know how you're going to monitor that. It's
I don't know.
Passport patrol on an invisible borderline where you can just pop in. But there we go. Anyway, so it was all good. No harm done. Nothing majorly traumatic, apart from the fact that the metro had been shut down and there were roadblocks. Something that is more traumatic and disturbing was the fact that the police explore criminal lead after fatal Paris fire. 3 people died in a disaster on Sunday. 2 of them were probably shot, and a third fell to his death from the 7th floor. Now, what I found interesting about this was investigations initially pointed to a gas leak. As the building was not connected to the city network, it may have been a leaking gas cylinder. Now, what surprised me was in the 11th arrondissement, there is a premises that doesn't have mains gas connected. That's just, honestly, it's still weird. I know I've mentioned this before in the part that we cut out, but I still can't get unless it was a deserted building, but I don't think it would have. I mean, it may have been.
Yeah, but you just wouldn't have. Maybe they just didn't have the gas connected. So if you don't want it, disconnect the gas. So you might be just using electric and not gas. Then how did the fire happen?
Gas cylinder.
Gas cylinder. But if it wasn't connected, what?
Well, no, like you get your camping gas or your little fire heaters.
Yeah.
I'm a fire heater. I shouldn't be joking because there have been 3 deaths. 2 of them, suspicious ones, were found with bullet holes in them. So that's a little bit disturbing.
So they were covering up.
Absolutely. Apparently it's all due to the hydrocarbon traces that were found. So, I believe that's to do with accelerants. And what I like about this podcast at the moment is when I say something that may not be factually correct, I have such a low level of listener that no one comes back to correct me. And that's quite amazing. And when they do start to correct me, I'm going to be so proud of myself that I've reached that level of fame where people are going, actually, Paul, you're wrong. Or they may go, actually, an Englishman in Paris.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
Get it right.
sitting in a bedroom in East London. Yeah, I know. There we go. So, one final story before we move on to good news is, not that one, this one here. French police evict hundreds of migrants from a Paris warehouse ahead of the Olympics. It was a large-scale operation because we have less than 100 days to the Olympics. And there are, at the time of this episode going out, on the 23rd of April, which is only a few days away from someone's birthday. We will have 93 days until we're back in Paris.
We do.
And I'm quite excited. I've still not paid for the apartment.
Oh.
But they are holding it.
Okay.
So I'm going to cover more of this in episode, I think it's going to be 2.2 of season 2.
Oh, yes.
Paris Olympics, where I'll be taking my microphone and talking to my family, ma famille, whilst we're watching the Olympics and doing, probably not live broadcasting, but we'll be making notes, taking photos, plenty of videos.
I think an Englishman in Paris can see my face right now.
Yes, it's not all about the podcast. I've mentioned this before. It's not. It's just brief snippets when we're sitting down for dinner in the evenings.
If anyone is listening, it is because it's a family holiday. And if anyone knows me very well, who is listening, will know
that's just me then.
how protected I am over family time.
Yeah, no, we've got something special booked. I didn't want to tell you, but we do have something special booked.
We do.
That's going to be on a Tuesday, by the way.
Yes, okay.
Because actually, I think I'm going to be in Paris for 2 days.
Yeah.
We arrive on a Thursday. We're going to go to Saint Denis. I was telling Jasper.
Yeah.
Which you'll probably hear in the next episode, which is in 3 weeks' time at the date of this release. But if you're listening in 4 years' time, it's already happened, so you know about it anyway. Although, that's a good question. How do you listen to your podcasts? If you take, I don't know, a podcast has got 100 episodes, how do you listen to it?
I go right back to the very beginning.
And you work your way through?
And I work my way through. I start from the top down. I don't go newest backwards. I go oldest to newest. And then I sometimes I go in and out of different podcasts. And when I go back, I clear it so it's unplayed, oldest episodes. And then I just keep going through.
And that's using Spotify?
Using Spotify.
Okay. It's not sponsored. But I can endorse them because I pay them enough each month.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I do. Except for Revolutions, where I just want to learn about the French Revolution. He's taking about 13 and a half hours to talk about French Revolution.
But it wasn't a quick thing.
It certainly wasn't by the sounds of it.
there's a lot involved in the revolution.
Yeah. So. We're covering that. I think it's season 3.
Who's we?
Oh, I forgot to tell you. We're covering that in season 3.
Right, if anyone is out there and listening, can you please help me? We're kind of going to have a quick history lesson on the revolution.
Yeah, but by the time we listen to this episode in 7 years' time, we would have already covered it. That's not a problem. So going back to the migrants' camp, they're moving about 450 migrants from the southern Paris suburb of Vitry-sur-Seine, and that was done 2 days back on Wednesday, April the 17th, which is actually more than that many days because it's being released on the 13th.
Now, I have a real problem with this.
I know. Oh, so with the dates or the movement of the...
the movement.
The movement of
the title of the entire article, really. So, moving migrants is one thing. And where are they putting them? But then it says ahead of the Olympics. So it's like they're trying to have a clean-up to almost put their best foot forward, which I know we talked about, but their best foot forward just to show, and actually I don't think they should. It's the reality, and I think we shouldn't be shying away from the reality. So to me, it's two things there ahead of the Olympics, so that we can make space or to show our best foot forward. I don't know, but I do have a real problem with that article, really.
Well, just having scrolled to the bottom of the article, it does say that earlier this month, being April, French police removed about 50 migrants, including families with young children, from the forecourt of Paris City Hall. The migrants packed their belongings and boarded a bus to temporary government housing in the town of Besançon in eastern France. I do need to stop reading from Lemonade, or Le Monde, as it's also called, because it is always negative stuff here. But that being said...
Yes?
This one isn't from Le Monde. This is from the local.
Okay.
And I don't know how this intellectual property goes. The fact that I have 17 people listening, I'm sure no one's going to kick up a fuss. But if I say where it's from, then technically I've covered myself with copyright infringement. I don't know, intellectual property.
If you are citing it...
Yeah, I just told you where I got it from.
Then it's absolutely fine.
There we go. So, good old Anouk Garnier broke the rope climbing world record on Wednesday morning after she ascended 100 metres to the second floor of the Eiffel Tower. The 34-year-old asked through tears while throwing herself into the arms of her family, including her very proud mother, "I really did it." Now, I don't know if they were at the top or at the bottom. You kind of hope that they weren't climbing with her. It was a world record that she did. She beat the previous marks held by a South African who climbed 90 metres and a Dane, Ida Mathilde Steensgaard, who peaked at 26 metres for the women's record. After just 18 minutes of climbing compared to the 20 minutes initially estimated, she finally hit 100 metres. That's quite good going, though. 18 minutes to climb up a rope, 100 metres.
That's pretty good.
Imagine doing that in Gladiators. Yeah. But there's no walls.
I mean, that's
just
pretty
open space.
impressive, actually. That's
That is
very,
good.
very impressive. Good on her.
And it's probably still quicker than queuing up and taking the lift.
But no ideas, anyone. Don't start climbing anything up.
No, I would say don't do this at home. But if you can climb the Eiffel Tower at home, then go for it, really. You must have a really big garden. So that's the news of the week. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for, the actual interview that took place between myself, Nev and Claudine Hemingway. So Nev, apart from her fabulous shoes, what do we know about Claudine?
Claudine is an author and historian and a podcaster. She has a great Instagram page called Claudine Bleu Blonde Rouge, which details a lot of history, particularly around the Louvre. And currently she is reporting on the restoration of Notre Dame, which has been really lovely to watch, actually, because I think it's such a fabulous thing. So that's what we know about her currently. I really do hope everyone enjoys the episode as much as we did talking to her, a fabulous lady. So enjoy.
Just before we do, did you also notice she covered the floods of the Seine?
She did.
I thought that was beautiful. I used to, as much as it pains me watching it, I used to enjoy those in the morning. In fact, every morning she starts with a picture and the name of the day in French, which is useful for me. And
she has taught me a lot of French, actually.
Yeah, I didn't mean the fact it's in French, just the fact of the day of the week. That's always useful waking up to. But so here we go. It's time for a little bit of a sing-song just before we leap into 1.8 Avec Claudine.
Coffee pot conversations.
So I'm no good with introductions and I'm no good with wrapping up.
Okay.
But I am learning about cutting and splicing.
Okay.
So fingers crossed. So before we do start, is there anything you don't want me to ask or topics you don't want me to cover?
No.
Okay. That's easy.
Not that I could think of.
Yeah. So, President Macron.
Yeah, I think he's hot.
I think we all think that.
I have zero problem with her. I had to actually try. Because I'd always put all the pictures of him, like especially in the summer when he's like shirtless and like funny, on my Instagram stories, and then all my French friends were like, "Buddy, you can't do that." So then a couple of my French girlfriends, we just send up a look with each other.
But he is a good-looking chap.
He is. Mm-hmm.
Apparently, I've been told. Right, so hello, and who are you?
My name is Claudine Hemingway, and I live in Paris now, and I'm a writer. This is always the hardest thing to say because people ask, and it's very hard to say short. I'm a writer. I write about Paris, and with that, I have a podcast. I have a newsletter I do every week that's like writing a novel. I do tours of Paris. I plan people's trips. So pretty much my whole life is about Paris and sharing the story of the history and my love of Paris with people.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And with us today we have Nev, who's co-host for the day.
It's always good to have that extra.
Support with backup.
Yeah.
But we both follow you on Instagram, and Nev does like what you... I mean, I like what you do as well, but Nev...
Well, thank you.
I found it very interesting. Really interesting.
So if you've got any questions...
I will. I'll
Jump in.
Absolutely. Right. So the first question from the list is, where did your love of history come from?
I mean, Paris history specifically, because if you would ask my grandma when she was still alive, it definitely was not about other history. She'd always say, just think if you got to study Paris and French history in school, how much better you would have done. I was like, yeah, I know. So, but my grandparents came to Paris in 1972 for the first time together. My grandpa was in World War II, and he came over for a day from England. He was stationed in Attlebridge, England, for the Air Force, or Army, U.S. Army, Air Force, and then Air Force. And he loved it just for the afternoon, and so they came back, waited till quite a few years, 1972, and came. And then he would love to walk the streets and take photos. And then when I was a little older, I would remember he'd pull out the photos and write on the back, because they'd come every couple years. And I was that kid that always asked why, what is that? And he would tell me the story. So I think it was like started to be, inbred into my psyche from a very early age. And then I just kind of fell in love with it. I mean, it all probably starts with the Eiffel Tower for everybody, because they just like, what is this magical place? And then from there, I just kind of, went deeper and deeper. The first time I came to Paris was 2016. And then for that, I was here. I got here September 4th. And on September 7th, I had this night leaving the Louvre by myself. I had a friend of mine that was here with me, and she stayed in the apartment. I went to the Louvre by myself and left, because I saw the sky was pink. I went running through the Tuileries, and at the end of it kind of stood there and saw, everything was pink and beautiful, and I could hear people speaking French and laughing and glasses clinking, and I was like, this is what I was meant to do and what I was meant to be. So that's kind of, and then while I was here, every time I'd come, I'd just find more and more things, deeper and deeper and deeper, to know, like, why is the cafe we're in, why is it here, why are these things hanging on the wall, who came here. I mean, I pretty much do that everywhere. Last night we were on the metro, and I was like, all the time, I'm like, who is this metro named after? Who is this one? What was this? Is this like, and it's like, it's all I do. So even though I spent all my time pretty much doing nothing but everything about French history, I'll only be in the top, like, the tip of the iceberg, as they say. And that's pretty great.
I've found out myself. I'll start with the topic.
Oh, yeah.
We went to a rooftop cinema, watched Casablanca. I've never seen Casablanca.
One of my favourites, yeah.
Amazing.
It was beautiful. And I thought, well, how true to life is it? So I started digging.
Yeah.
And then from there, I learned so much.
Yeah.
Not related to Casablanca, the film,
Yeah.
but the French going over with the whole trade routes and everything.
Right.
So
yeah.
it's rabbit holes.
I'm infamous for my rabbit holes, where I could, start, like, I'm doing this thing, and then I go down there, and then I find something else, and then I go to that, and then I find another thing, and then 3 hours later, I'm way off course. But I find, like, the coolest things, and eventually those serve me for something, so it's good for some reason, but it's like, I'm not so good at, like,
keeping focused
on because
the
I
topic.
just find something that's, more exciting.
Yeah, it is. See, that's why I'm awake at night.
Yeah, that is why he's awake.
My brain's going on.
Yeah. That is hard.
So I've got backup now.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, okay. What made you give it all up and move to Paris? What was your eureka moment?
Well, that night that I left the Louvre, that definitely was that eureka moment where, I think I joked around and told everybody before, I had my tickets, about 10 months before I came. A friend of mine had like a zillion miles, and she's like, I'm going to get you a ticket. I'm never going to be able to use all these miles. I'm going to get you a ticket to Paris. She lived in Italy at the time. I'll meet you there. And so I was like, no, I have to work. I was an event planner for 23 years, and 10 of those years I didn't even have more than 2 days off in a month, much less vacation. And so it was prime time for me to go. And but it's like, from the moment I got here, I was like, oh, but I would tell people before, I was like, I'm going to go to Paris. I'm going to meet a French fireman. I'm never going to come back. Second to last day, I met the French fireman. 3 weeks later, I came back.
So you're a fortune teller.
We're still friends. But it was, I just knew from that moment. And then it was kind of like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to do this? And then I started just writing and sharing all these stories. And then and then I had people saying, hey, I'm coming to Paris. Would you want to do a tour? And I was like, maybe this is something. And then COVID happened, which was kind of a blessing in disguise in some ways, and I was able to focus even more. We started a podcast. We did these live video walks, so my friend that was here, Crystal, would do the actual video. and I would give, like, I'd put the whole route together, and I do all of the vocal of the history of on the street and stuff, when people really wanted that. And so then once we came out of that, everybody was kind of like, we want to do tours, and then I was like, okay, hey, this is how I could do this. So when I lost my grandmother April of last year, that was the moment where I was like, I literally have no reason to be here now without her, so I'm out of here. So, and it was, we were incredibly close. She was 99 and 5 months old, so I was incredibly lucky to have her as long as I did. But it was also like, this is her way now of saying, okay, 'cause there's no way she would have let me go before. So that was definitely, but that was, the whole moving here, some people think it's so easy, but you literally give up your whole life, and it takes, it was, there was days where you don't know how much garbage you have until you like, how many of those sweaters did I own? Once you take them all out of the cupboards, it's like, it's really daunting. And then you get to a point where you're like, why do I have any of this? And now there's times all the time, like, God, I wish I saved that coat.
all the time. Or you're looking for something and you can't find anything, you throw it away.
Oh no, I do that with books. I'm like, I know I have that book, and I'm ripping my apartment apart, but I probably had that book back in Portland. I don't have that book anymore. So, but it was worth it. It's definitely different living here than visiting. When you live here, because I have so many things I do every day. It's like, well, I have a tour, I have this, or I got to do that. When you're visiting, it was like, what should I do today? Oh, it's sunny out, then I'll go outside. And I don't have those days really anymore. I'm trying to incorporate maybe a little earlier and actually go sit and have coffee in the morning. But it's different. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's pretty great.
Is there a certain period in history that you prefer more than others? Before we came on, these are pretty much standard interview questions.
That one, I've been asked that one a few times when I've been on other podcasts, and it's impossible for me to answer because it could actually change 3 times in a day. Right now I'm doing an insane amount of research on Napoleon III and what he did for the Louvre, because the November 18th is the 30th anniversary of the Richelieu wing being part of the museum, which 30 years ago is not that long ago, and that whole part before 30 years ago was office of the Ministry of Finance. And so I've been doing all this research to do that. And so right now, that's where I would want to be. I'd want to be there in 1852 and see how they were, building this. But it could be, I could be writing something tonight about Marie Antoinette, and I'll think that sounds great. Until, you needed to use like the restroom or take a shower, that I'd probably bounce out of that era. But it changed. There's just so many fascinating ones. I can't ever say there's a favorite. Or some, it just changes, which is nice, because then it's, you never, there's some people that like, I just researched World War II. I just research, things like this, but it's kind of nice because it's all over the place and different all the time.
Do you find that you prefer sort of people of history or periods of history, or you don't get sort of rabbit holes and it opens up your mind?
Yeah, especially, like the people, and with the podcast, when we started the podcast, it was mostly about women in French history inspired by Paris, so it could have been Julia Child, but a lot of them were French women, and some of them I'd get so attached to, like Rose Valland, who's like my end-all be-all greatest woman in French history that saved the art that was stolen.
I remember listening to that one. I commented on one of your pieces.
Yeah. I love her. I will never stop talking about her. Camille Claudel, Johann Van Gogh, who saved, we wouldn't know who Vincent is if it wasn't for her. And some of them, it's like, I get this like attachment to them, like this fierce attachment of like, I'll fight you over it. Like, same thing I will about Coco Chanel. If anybody says anything good about her, I'll literally go to the mat and beat it out of you that she's a good person, because she's the worst.
I remember listening to that one as well. It's like, I want to go to the check. No, you don't.
Yeah. But it's, it's hard. There's so many of them. Somebody wanted me to give a list of like my 5 people in French history I'd want to have a dinner party, and I was like, I don't think I could get it to just 5. It'd be too hard.
So, if you held a dinner party with
Rose Valland.
Ooh. How do you? I surprised myself with this question. How do you choose what to post on Instagram and also on your blog as well?
A lot of it is because it would get so difficult to figure out. So I have this calendar. I mean, and, like, I'm full deep nerd over here because I ended up buying this like perpetual calendar journal. So it doesn't have a year on it, but it says, you know, November 12th, whatever. And so last year when I was stuck in Houston, Texas, when I was trying to get my visa finished, I bought this thing on Amazon, and I sat there for a month and a half every single day going through like all the things I'd written down. I had a Google Calendar where I'd put dates when I would see, oh, like, you know, Louis Visconti died on this date or whatever. And I went through French Wikipedia, and you could go in there and put like 11 November, and it gives you all of like a bunch of events, birthdays, deaths, everything. And I did that, and so I have this book. And so then I try to plan it out like 2 weeks at a time, and I go through the whole thing, and I'm like, okay, this is what happened on this day. So it's kind of topical to what it is. Otherwise, it's like sometimes I just sit there and like, what am I going to write today? I have to have something that kind of keeps me on there. But then there's days where I'm like, oh no, but these 3 major things happened, and I kind of, it's hard for me sometimes to choose.
For some reason, I'm trying to post a story every day.
Yeah.
I've got 1,500 photos of Paris.
Oh, yeah.
And I choose it. I went through a phase for about 2 weeks of getting the photo, doing the research, putting it on the story, and it took forever.
It takes the stories take forever. And like even last night, I mean, we got home at like, I don't know, midnight, and I'm days behind. I'm like a week behind on stories. But we went to like, you know, we got yesterday the Louvre is closed, and so I had an invite to go when it was closed, and I was like, well, I gotta put that today. And then we went to this opera last night, this private opera thing, and I was like, well, I have to post that today too. And so it's like, it's 45 minutes, and I'm not even writing stories on it, like writing all these things. But when I have to do that, then sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm gonna put all these things on my stories tonight. And then I get home and I'm like, I don't want to spend an hour writing what that painting was, and then I just end up never doing it. I'm trying to be like, just do it during the day, during pieces. But when I do that, people are always like, oh, I feel like I was there. So it means a lot to people, but I don't think sometimes they realize how much time it takes.
That's for sure. Yeah, now it's like lunch break at work, right, photo done.
Exactly, yeah.
I find a bit of music, that's it.
Yeah, somebody said message one time, and they were like, there's no context on here, and I was like, Rrr. And I was like, do you understand how long it takes to do all that and get everything else done?
Yeah. What made, we've covered it sort of, but what made you move into podcasting, and how did you end up working with Crystal?
Well, it's kind of funny. Crystal and I met at a party in 2019, spring of 2019. She was taking photographs of a friend, and they kind of knew each other. And she and I, it was one of those things like, you know, when you meet certain people and you just instantly click, and we were chatting away. And then we kept in touch, and then during COVID, she's like, you know, I'm going to start this podcast. Would you be on an episode? And I was like, sure. And then I kind of at the same time was thinking about doing that just because I could, you know, you only have 2,200 characters on Instagram. My newsletters are sometimes like 6 pages if you print it out. It's ridiculous. Like I need to get myself under control. But I thought, oh, maybe that's a good avenue to share more history. But I was like, I don't know if I really want to do it by myself, because then you know that I'd probably be picking it apart and having edit it. And so I did an episode with her, and then I talked about some French history, and it was the second episode, and then people said, oh, that was really great, having all that history. And so then she's like, would you want to do something together? And I was like, well, I was thinking about starting one, so that's kind of how that worked out. It is really fun. I mean, now, like, we've morphed into doing other things, not just women in French history, where we'll do, like, we just recently did, like, cheap things to do in Paris, because everybody thinks Paris is so expensive, but it really doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
And, you know, doing things like walking, like, basically you can take one of the episodes with you and walk down the street, and we'll say, oh, here at this building is this. So we're kind of doing it that way. Then it's also me trying to work smarter, not harder, where I'm like, okay, well, I do the live videos every Sunday on YouTube, and then I could turn that into this and turn that. So, but it is fun because, you know, then there's people I really want to share their story. And it's like, I want, like Simone Weil, who's like another one of those amazing women in French history. But it's also like, I need to have like 2 days to research it, because for somebody like that, I want to get it right, like 100% right. And sometimes I do the podcast and then I do more research a year later and I'm like, oh, like I learned something more. So maybe one day I'll have to be like, these are, some extras. So on episode 22, this is what I now learned.
So what is your creative process? Just you wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee and sit down, or?
Yeah,
Moving around?
I'm definitely more of a first thing in the morning. I really like that. It's now it's I'm up all night these days, and then I'm not sleeping. I sleep until like 7:30.
Podcast the thing.
Yeah.
Developing it somehow.
But I used to be one that went to sleep at like 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. and then I'd wake up at when I was living in the States, I'd wake up at like 3 in the morning. It just that was my best time. I loved it.
I'm pointing. If
Yeah.
anyone's wondering, I'm actually pointing.
So, but it's but then sometimes like later in the day, like at night, that's also when I could kind of do it. Sometimes during the day, I get like sidetracked.
Yeah.
So like if Alex is home, then it's almost better because I know he's like sitting behind me, and I'm like, don't go shop on Louboutin.com. Stay on here because he's like, dude, I'm so proud you work so hard. I'm like, I know I am. And I'm like, So it's different. But now it's like I gotta get these things done, and I have to that's where it gets hard. But it's you just kind of have to find the time. But sometimes like if I've had a tour all day or all morning, and then I have the afternoon, I get home, and then it's like I don't want to sit and do work now. I want to look out the window. I mean, now that it's getting colder and rainier, it's a little easier to do that. But when it was like nice out, you're like, I don't want to be inside. I want to be outside sitting in the park.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I fully understand about the waking up. I'm there 3 o'clock on the button, start right,
Yeah.
and my mind's racing.
Yeah.
Then I try to remember for the morning. I wake up 6:30, get ready, go to the office, hide away in a little cubby hole, tap away,
Yeah.
come home, and generally it's Thursday nights, 9 o'clock at night, I'm still going.
Yeah,
10
yeah.
o'clock, 11, midnight. It's even been 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I've finished. That's enough. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's kind of, when you're a writer or you're doing something creative, you kind of have to do it when the moment strikes too. You can, Ernest, the other Hemingway, the Hemingway, he used to always say, you stop writing where you're going to go next. So it's like, don't, finish that page or finish that chapter, but you already know in your head tomorrow, this is where the story is going. So you have that. But it's also, you can't, if you're in a creative field, you can't just be like, okay, I'm going to sit down right now and do this because, if your mind is going somewhere else and you need to focus on something, you're kind of screwed.
That's where Netflix comes in.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it's like I try to only have like classical music or opera. I can't have, because sometimes I'll put something on and then, like it was Earth, Wind and Fire one day and I was sitting there dancing it right, and I was like, I was having a great time. I wasn't getting anything done though.
Sounds like a great party though.
Yeah.
Are they the ones that did, do you remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
But that now links
It just
back,
came on today. What's why I wasn't getting a lot done.
so it links back to a question I was going to ask. You came over in September, and if it'd been during the December, do you think it'd been the same? Because where you've sort of gone through to the Jardin Tuileries, they
Yeah.
have their Christmas market.
Yeah.
Would that have given you a different, do you think that would have given you a different feel to it? To sort of how you perceived Paris?
Maybe. I mean, I think it just was everything. I mean, it was, the thing about Paris is you've got the architecture and just, and I don't just look at the architecture. It's like I look at the architecture and the story behind it and who built it and why. And is it Haussmann? And is it the second floor with the iron and the railing and the top floor? And so I think it would have, because I also love the winter. I'd always used to come like right after Christmas for a couple weeks. And I loved it even though it was cold because you have these streets and trees on the streets that normally block everything, but now all of a sudden there's no leaves on them. And so you have this whole different view of the city. It's almost you almost have a whole, it just changes. And the light is always great in the winter. So there was never really, this was my first year here to June, July, August, like the whole time. And that was, it wasn't that hot this year until we had like a stretch of like a week and a half. But that wasn't too bad, except for a lot of people. But I love it any season.
Comparing the weather to, I was going to say back home, but
Portland.
Mm-hmm. Where do you class home, here or there?
Here. I know, even when I still live technically in Portland, this was home. Like I was like, even if I never lived there, Paris in my heart will be home. And if friends of mine, they would be, you know, I'd come back and they'd be like, welcome home. And they, after a couple trips, I would get so mad. I was like, this isn't home. Paris is home. But they're like, yeah, okay, we got it. They're like, yeah, and also thanks, we're your friends and we live here. But it, you know, it's there. My French friends were like, why would you want to move here? It's gray and rainy. I'm like, Portland, Oregon is gray and rainy 10 months out of the year if you're lucky. So it wasn't, I was like, this at least it's gray and rainy and gorgeous. Portland was, you know, Portland's great if you like outdoorsy things. I am not an outdoorsy person, so hiking and all that kind of stuff is really lost on me, so it wasn't really my thing.
I don't know if I should ask this, but how often do you buy new shoes?
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't go down rabbit holes like this.
You know, when I was an event planner, I had like 150 pairs of high heels, like every color you could imagine. None of them were like
Practical.
no, well, they were, you know, I thought they were all practical, but none of them were like expensive. I mean, I think maybe, you know, the most I ever spent was like $50. Like they weren't, you know, because I had events, and so you know, that was my excuse. And so when I was moving, I pretty much got rid of all of them, but 2 pairs. And a friend of mine came over and helped, and she wore the same size, and I literally was like, just take whatever you want. She would leave with like bags and baskets of shoes, and then we sold a bunch of them. But I had always said that when I moved to Paris, one of the first things I was getting was a pair of Louboutin heels, because I mean that's the holy grail of shoes. And so before I even officially moved here, I was like, screw it, close it up. And I got my first pair of Louboutin heels. But now, you know, with my job as, you know, a guide and walking through the city every day, they're not the most practical shoes to wear. Walking through the city, I think I would, you know, die. And so now they have, you know, they have the sneakers, and they have all the other, you know, loafers and boots. And so I do unfortunately get a few pair, but you know, to the point where I was invited to their special, you know,
the Avengers.
Yeah, so he did a big thing for Marvel Comics, because now owned by Disney, and it's Disney's 100th anniversary. And so I was invited to like the, you know, preview of this, when I was told it was like me and one other client. I said, oh, apparently I have a problem, because if I'm at this status where I'm being invited to this, I maybe need to slow my roll on the old shoes. But you know, that's how I kind of, you know, have a really good week or a good month, and I'm like, hey, I'll go buy a pair of shoes. You know, there's worse things you could do.
Handbags.
Yeah, but now my apartment is basically all books, and then there's getting to be a fair double stack of Louboutin shoe boxes at the moment.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
Whatsoever. Does that come up?
Last question on the list. Have you found any major culture issues with Paris compared to Portland?
No, I mean, I kind of, you know, even the things that it's frustrating, you know, sometimes the bureaucracy, I just had to figure out a bunch of stuff for my health and things like that. But thankfully I have, you know, a Frenchman that took care, you know, went with me and held my hand and helped me through all of it. And because otherwise that would have been, you know, a huge thing. But it's, you know, the bureaucracy and sometimes dealing with the French is not, you know, now it's like, you know, there's certain ones, like one of the same guys I see every day when I go in my member's door at the Louvre, and I'm like, one of these days I'm going to get that guy to crack a smile. And one of these days it's going to happen. And I said that the other day, and as soon as we walked in, Alex was like singing and dancing and cracking him up. And I was like, damn it! That was my thing. But, you know, they're a hard nut to crack. Once you do crack them, you know, you're kind of in there, and you're in there forever. There's moments where that's like it's just frustrating. But, you know, just even this morning I had to like run over to the grocery store, and then I ran over to the little market guy, and then ran and picked something up. And, you know, these are places I go all the time, and they're always like, bonjour, like happy to see you. And those are the moments where I feel like, okay, I really live here. Because you just have those little relationships, and as much as sometimes it's frustrating, it's also pretty great.
So never been to Portland, but I'm assuming you've got like the big supermarkets over there.
Oh, like massive. I mean, but the funny thing is like even before COVID, I hated going to the grocery store. So I was always one of those early adopters of, you know, buy online and have them drop it off. So when COVID happened, I was like, oh, I got this. But because also if you go to the grocery store, you'd always be like, oh, well, yes, of course I need those 4 kinds of French cheese and 3 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
So it kind of kept you, better at what you shop for. But I mean, the massive grocery stores, and here, there's a pretty good sized grocery store by my apartment, but it's still, it's in the States, and I don't know if it's like this in the UK, but you go to the grocery store and you need to get your aspirin, and you need to get, a broom, and you need all these different things. You go to one place and get it. In France, no, you go to you have to go 5 different places to go get each one of these things, which sometimes, but I also kind of love that. And it's all, I can walk right out my door and get everything I need within, 10 minutes. So that's what's kind of nice. But, the big grocery store, but what you get here, the produce, everything is just so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can so tell that.
Yeah.
I actually really want an apartment just so I can cook, go shopping, get all the things that
Yeah.
I need, go and spend the day cooking in my apartment. I mean, I would absolutely love that.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And the big thing, when I was in Houston, Texas, I remember I was like, well, I'm just going to go walk to the grocery store that was 1.5 miles away. And you're walking down, first there's no sidewalk because nobody walks. And then people are looking at you like, you're this homeless weirdo walking down the street, because why would you be walking? I mean, you drive everywhere. And I've had people say, would you buy a car there? And I'm like, no, why would I buy a car? Well, now I'm getting into doing something with a Deshavo. But it's like, why would you don't need to drive. I can't remember the last time I drove a car. I mean, it's probably been 4 or 5 years. It's been pre-COVID that I drove a car. And it's kind of like, you don't need a car. You just walk everywhere, and it's just, I think everything's better.
See that?
Just thinking about the chap at the Louvre. Mm-hmm. Next time you walk past, just look at him. Do you remember?
Yeah. I know I should break out into a little Earth, Wind and Fire. He'd probably be like, lady, you're nuts.
Right, I've finished my questions. You'll be pleased to hear. Is there anything you want to talk about, to mention, or to ask?
I don't think so. I mean, there's, I'm sure you'll put links to, the podcast and tours, and, I spend most of my tours in the Louvre, but I do tours all over. My tour started, it was Hemingway, of course. That's when, I was like, oh, I'll do a Hemingway tour, and that one now I rarely do. I mean, I do it every once in a while, but I do too, and I could create tours anywhere in the city because I now know every corner of it, so they're always custom, never the same, which is fun for me, so I don't have a script, but yeah,
And
lots of stuff.
I want you to mention your website.
ClaudineHemingway.com. There's only one M in that Hemingway. That's a huge pet peeve of, I think, anybody with that name. But that's where you can find all that good stuff. And, I should have the whole shoe page on there. Until my mom sends me a message, you got it done. Now I don't put pictures, walking home with a bag. Unless my mom will say, what did you buy now? It's not your problem. Don't worry about it.
And your Instagram handle?
Is Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge.
See, I love
So
that.
it was a take on the French flag, which I just actually, French friend, this gal I met is friends with Alex, and she was like, I don't speak very good English. I was like, it's in French, Bleu Blanc Rouge. But I had to explain that it's the flag, Bleu Blanc Rouge, but the middle, the blonde, is because of my very blonde hair.
And have you noticed, I don't know if it's something noticeable, but the blue in the flag changed.
Yeah, they did just slightly change it. It's not, it's more of and I guess it does sometimes over time, different presidents do it.
I sort of make their own,
Yeah.
rather than sort of knock down an entire city
Yeah.
and rebuild it, they just
Yeah.
change the colour of the
Yeah,
flag.
they just change it, but I don't think anybody would even actually notice it unless, you knew that it happened.
See, I was trying to match the Pantone colours,
yeah.
and I typed it in on Google, and it came up different options. So I thought, I don't know which the one is, so
Yeah.
I just did blue, and that was it. I left it.
Gotta go, just put the blue. Yeah, it is kind of funny that they're like, oh, we're just gonna now change this. I mean, it's very French. it's very French, and you know, it's all about the details. So of course they're gonna decide one day. It's better not change the red though.
It's a very passionate red, though, isn't it?
I love, yeah. But red's my favorite color. My nail gals are always big out, it's Big Apple Red is my fingernail color. And they're always like, oh, like, now it's la même, the same. And now they don't even ask. They're just like, they just know.
Changing topics, all the problems, in air quotes, that, like the riots and everything else, what's your take on that? I'm not from a political stance, but from a news way, because again, it was, I think, the marathon.
Yeah, okay.
And they were, coming from London, all my friends, don't go to Paris, don't go.
Yeah.
It's troubles. It was one street, and the news article, they had about 4 or 5 different angles of that same street.
Yeah,
And so,
it's kind of it's so funny because especially like the U.S. news is like crazy, and so all the time it's like the summer with the bed bugs, and then it's whatever, and it's like all those things that people like they're showing in the media because Paris sells. So if they're saying stay tuned after the commercial, this thing in Paris. But it is usually like, the first time they were going down Boulevard Saint-Germain, I was on the other side of it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get over there to get home. And I was like, do I walk across? But it was like, basically it was just like a giant, like it went on for miles of people that was like a walking like parade with music, because they're just walking and they're totally like peaceful, and you walk across it and they're fine. It just gets to the end of it, and then you got these bad guys that come in and they're like, well great, we can wreak havoc. And then the way the news portrays it is they like zoom in on this tiny garbage can on fire, so they zoom on it so it looks like a dumpster, and you're like, that's not even, and it could be happening 2 blocks from you and you would never know it. So it's just kind of this funny, the bed bug thing this summer, and I had clients that were like, the bed, and I was like, there's literally nobody talks about that here. So it's always sensationalized, I think. And it's funny the amount of times I would get, when we had the Gilets jaunes, and then you had the retirement age, and all these people were panicking. And one day I got so tired of it that people sending me messages that are like, it's scary there. And I took a picture of something that said it was the 149th day of the year in the U.S. and it's the 180th mass shooting or something like that. And then I shared it, and I was like, and people are afraid to come here?
Yeah.
Like, in America, you need to be afraid to go to the grocery store or to a movie theater or anywhere that you could just get shot and killed. But that's not going to happen here. Sure, bad things happen, but you're not going to be walking across to protest and worry about getting shot. So it's just, it's all that deflection. Like, let's deflect over to here. But Paris sells. Anytime they use Paris as a clickbait for it, it's always really good. But it's never what it appears to be on the news, ever.
what do you think the connection? I know you can't speak for all the Americans, but what do you think the love affair of Paris with Americans is all about?
I just did my friend John Baxter. I just did his new book came out, and we just did an event at Shakespeare and Company last week, and I hope was the one who. And his new book is all about love in Paris. So it's these different love stories in Paris history. And I was like, why do you think that is? And I think a lot of it is because I think a lot of people come here and it is this fantasy. Everybody has their own version before they get here of what they think Paris is going to be, or if it's the Eiffel Tower, or if it's, whatever it is. And then I think sometimes people come here and they know they could kind of reinvent themselves. So they could be this different version of who they are, and a more, like I was like, I'm my better version when I was here, because I was just so happy and everything was like, happy to see everything, and I was like, I feel like I'm a better person when I'm there. When I go back, I'm like, I hate my job, I hate people, I hate everything. But here, you love everything. But I don't know, I think it's just something, because it's just, everything's beautiful, and I think, how could that not inspire? But it does, but there is, the Emily in Paris, there's all those different things that people kind of fall in love with, but that's not anywhere near the real Paris.
So from a non-professional, purely personal point of view, what do you think of Emily in Paris?
Emily,
I'll start off with, what did you think of Sex in the City?
Well, the original Sex and the City
Yes.
I loved.
I'm with you.
The original.
Original.
As soon as they killed off Mr. Big in the remake,
Yeah.
I was out.
Same.
I'm like,
exactly what
I will
said.
always be Mr. Big fan. And now,
Yeah.
like the last season, I still watch it, hate watch it.
Yeah.
But I thought the last one was better, but then they had to bring back the other ex-boyfriend, and I was like, oh,
I know.
But,
And he wasn't my favourite the first
no,
time.
but I was all Mr. Big. But
Same.
I still watch the original one. But,
Yeah.
and then it's the same people that made Sex and the City make Emily. But my problem with Emily is, first of all, she's not going to live in that apartment and dress that way. There's no way that she could afford those clothes and not be able to afford a better apartment. But it's also like, it's just as very, like, some people are like, oh, it's just a thing, it's just look at it as like it's pretty to see Paris. But the problem is now is that people come here, girls come here and act like that. The amount of times you see somebody wearing a red beret and a black and white houndstooth skirt and a red sweater, it's
Not me. I'm not doing
but
it
it's
today.
but it's because of that
Yeah.
show, which is great. But it's also like, don't come here and treat people that way. And the first time when I saw the second season, I tried to give an episode, and her boss, who I love, the French, they sat at Cafe Marley outside the Louvre. And then when she wanted the bill, she's French. She's a real French woman. And she said, garçon. And you would never say that. Like, if you said that to a server now, they'd probably throw a baguette at your head. And I was like, now people are going to come here and think that they're speaking French. And they're going to gossip. So it's kind of like, there's so much of it that annoys me. Now, the really hot guy that's her boss's boyfriend lives very close to me, so I sometimes run into him on the street, so I'm all for that.
When you said really hot guy, I thought you meant the one with the crazy hair.
No, but
I like
he
him.
lives around here too. I see him
Oh,
once
wow.
a week. I see him once a week.
fabulous.
He lives in Saint-Germain. I see him all the time, and you see people like, oh my gosh, and he just walks down the street like, he doesn't really care. The other day we saw Camille Cotin. Have you ever watched 10%, or Call My Agent in English?
I've seen bits of it.
She's on that, and we got on the metro, and he's like, there's a very famous French actress on here, and he's always playing tricks like that on me, and then I look and I was like, oh, and I was like, I love her, and I try to pull my photo, he's like, don't, and she was just sitting there on the metro holding a box of cookies, like grocery store cookies, and I was dying that I saw her, and then I had to, he would, and then I tried pulling up my phone. I was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Just looking at my phone."
Well, we were at a place just around the corner, Jardin de Roy, Rue Lachette, which is a really poor pronunciation. Again, earlier this year, and we saw. I think it was Toby from The Office,
Okay, yeah.
American Office, yeah.
but we still don't know if it was him or not.
Yeah.
But it just.
You did look like that, actually.
But you weren't in the office
I
at that point,
wasn't
were
at
you?
that point,
It's
so I
like,
was like,
Yeah.
who's the-
let me show you. It's,
Yeah, it is kind of, I mean, I saw Camille Cotin at a coffee shop one day, and then I went all the way around the block. French blocks are like, Paris blocks are like, 12 U.S. blocks. When it's all the way around, so I get a picture of her, and then I looked at the picture later. She was like looking right at me. So I was like, oh. But the other day, I was like, I'm gonna get off the same stop as her. We're gonna be best friends.
But you know why she was looking at you, didn't you? Because it was you, and she was going, "Is it her? Isn't it
Yeah,
her?"
oh, I'm sure that was it. Yeah, no, but you see that like all the time in Paris, and they just are like anybody else, I mean, they're not George Clooney. I mean, they were George Clooney or somebody like that walking down the street. They have security and everything. But Camille Cotin is a pretty major French star, and she's just on the metro by herself, just like everybody else.
Yeah. Brilliant.
But Emily, no.
Phil Collins, yes. Lily Collins,
Yeah,
not so much.
yeah. I find her so annoying. I hate to say it. It just I can't watch it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
For me, I love it because it's just escapism.
Yeah,
I watch
yeah.
it, it's like, oh, I know that place, I've been there,
Yeah.
I'm going to look at it. And it's the story, I think the first season, the story was great,
Yeah.
but then it got, I think,
Yeah.
too much involved with
Yeah.
everything. It's,
Yeah. I mean, I like the other people, like the people in her office and stuff like that, and that stuff is cute. But even like you watch any of those things like Midnight in Paris, and we watched that the other day, and it's like we're just like, oh, that's it. This it's like, well, now you live here, so you know all the things, but it's still really fun to see those things, and then now it's like, oh wait, now I know where that is, or So that's kind of fun.
So I do the same with London. You see film clips of car chases.
Oh,
you
yeah.
go, well, you turn left there. You don't end up in that street.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like,
you
well,
don't.
and then
Oh
they're back
yeah,
here
yeah.
again.
In Midnight in Paris, they were walking through. I can't remember where they said they were at a party, and then they were walking through the Place Dauphine on the Lieu de la Cité, and then they take a right, and they're coming down from Sacré-Cœur, and then they go another way, and now they're like back behind. And I was just like, "There's no way in this scene they just walked all those places," but you know. Those are the things you notice when you really know a place.
When you know, you know.
Yeah.
Right, well, that's it for me.
Well, it's wonderful. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. Glad it worked out.
Absolutely, yeah. Touch and go for a little while. I thought, do I email again? I don't know. Oh, I know you're busy, but I really want to talk to you. But no, so thank you for having us.
Thank you. It's very fun and fun to meet you both. Come back soon.
Will do.
Well, actually, I was thinking when I was actually planning today to walk in, I was like, I haven't done all the things I want to do, and I was like, when can we come back? And I was actually thinking February, March. Yeah,
I think that's how when I would leave, I'd have to already have my ticket for the next
Yeah.
time.
You see?
And
I'm not
really,
the only one.
It really was the only way I knew I could leave and be like, okay, because I know in 68 days exactly, I'm back on the plane.
Yeah.
That's how I mentally had to do it.
Yeah.
So we're coming back to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for the last 2 years, I've run the Paris Marathon, so we've always
Yeah.
had that April thing.
Yeah.
So we're looking at doing that, but
Yeah.
without me running.
Yeah.
Yeah. No running.
No
No
running.
running.
Actually enjoying it,
it.
and
Yeah.
taking it a bit differently. But yeah, I do want to come back again. I quite like that time of year.
Yeah.
Actually, I really do like it here.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
It's the best month of the year.
Yeah, I loved it. So yeah, I definitely want to come.
April in Paris, they write songs about it.
Yeah.
Frank
That's
Sinatra.
probably why then.
I just came from her, so yeah.
Yeah.
And she said the other one. Was it
Yeah.
Etta James? Oh, have I just made that name up?
Oh, Etta James?
Etta
Yeah,
James,
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So if someone would say, what's your song, what would your song be? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, I do love that
You know,
song.
I'm never get every time I hear
I
that
know.
song now.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's always like I love so many old French songs, Edith Piaf, and lots of, even Carla Bruni, the old, ex-president's
So
wife.
I never knew, but I recognised the name. And I thought, is it her or isn't it her? I thought, well,
Yeah,
would
she was married, which still is married to Sarkozy. I don't know. I mean, Neil Diamond's my end-all, be-all favorite of all time that I do love, but. Yeah, I don't, I do the same thing. I have like a song and I might listen to it 45 times and listen, in a row, and then I've ruined it.
I do that.
Favourite Neil Diamond song?
I Am, I Said, for sure. Yeah.
Is that, did he sing that in, it was a jazz singer?
Jazz Singer. No, one of the great movies that's some people are like, that and Xanadu are my two favorite movies, and people are like, those are horrible. But no, he didn't. I Am, I Said, I think was it's one he did in the 70s or so. But yeah, the Jazz Singer, I love all those too. I don't, the one that everybody knows, the Coming to America, that's kind of my, because that's just the one everybody knows, and I'm like, there's just so many other great ones that, he'd be my, I'd probably have a heart attack if I saw him on the street.
But just one last final bit. What about Barbarella?
Oh, I do that. My mother, that I think came out in the 60s.
I have no idea.
I think it
but
came
I know I
out in the
watched
60s before I was ever born. But I remember seeing it, and I don't know if it's because we had a Betamax, because my uncle lived in Hong Kong and worked for like Black & Decker, and my parents got a Betamax, and it was like, $6,000 or something at the time, because and we only had three things on video. We had Barbarella, On Golden Pond, and Jane Fonda's Workout. It was all Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
And On Golden Pond is still one of my favorite movies. I absolutely love it. But Barbarella too. And I remember watching it, and then as I got older, I was like, this was so inappropriate at the age I was to see this.
Yeah.
But you didn't really understand what was happening. But I do. I actually was talking about that the other day. I was like, I gotta watch that again.
I think we will.
But she's fluent in French. Jane Fonda is, because she was married to, was it Roger Vivier, whoever his name was, that was the director of that. And her daughter is French, and she's fluent in French.
Oh, wow.
I do that.
Yeah.
There we go.
And Jane Fonda Workout.
Jane Fonda.
I remember we'd sit there literally on the couch and watch it. like my aunt and uncle would come over and we'd be watching the workout. Not
it,
actually doing it, just watching it.
When I was at college, so UK-wise, we were in 16, 17. All up, oh, come on lads. And the sports master put on the Jane Fonda workout and we had to do it.
Yeah.
And it was a workout, that's
Yeah.
for sure. But
She's pretty great. I'll always think she's the best.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to stop the recording.
Alrighty.
And
Coffee Pot Conversations.
that was episode 1.8, Avec Claudine. So I'd like to say thank you firstly to Nev for co-hosting this episode with me. I'd also like to extend a huge, great big thank you to Claudine for agreeing to meet up with myself and unknowingly meet up with Nev. It couldn't have been easy being bombarded by, either of us. And also I'd like to wish her on the quiet a happy birthday because it's her birthday coming up in a few days' time. Nev.
Yes, I would like to thank Claudine. I did have a great time, and thank you to you for including me. I had a brilliant time, and it was really great talking to her. Really interesting lady. So I really hope you've all listened and enjoyed the podcast. So it was a really great time for us. So brilliant. Thank you.
And thank you. I'd also like to just apologise for any sound issues that did occur during the episode at the beginning. Not too sure what it was. Hopefully we fixed it. And maybe next time Nev decides she's going to co-host, we don't have those horrible noises. And I'm referring to the interference, not Nev. And now, Jasper's jingle.
Coming up on Coffee Pot Conversations.
We have the episode you've all been waiting for. When I say all, the 7 of us. It is 1.9 Jasper's Conversation.
And it's a really exciting episode. We've been waiting all season for this one.
And finishing off, if you've got anything that you want to have in the best bits until the episode's released, please do let me know. It's just going to be me talking and nobody wants that. But at this stage, you've really got not much choice. So join us on Coffee Pot Conversations, hosted by An Englishman in Paris. Don't forget you can find me on Instagram at An Englishman in Paris blog. You can read my blog at anenglishmaninparis.blog. You can find us on all your regular podcast channels, as well as now on Podbean, where we're doing the odd bit of live podcasting. That's all to be explained probably next season once I've worked out better logistics for it. So just want to say thank you once again to Nev, to Claudine, and to my just about a dozen listeners. Thank you very much. And good night. Or good day. Or good afternoon. But thank you.
Coffee Pot Conversations.